How did the ultimate TNA guy, AJ Styles, ever come to leave TNA in the first place? I'm just as dumbfounded by it now as I was then. So let's go back to the last TNA match of AJ Styles and find out what turned AJ's TNA turn from phenomenal to something categorically horrible. AJ Styles was very much TNA's man for all seasons, but a winter of discontent rolled in around the early 2010s in the form of Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan and Dixie Carter. More on her in a bit. The arrival of Hogan and Bischoff as the new creative leaders of TNA led to a clash of styles over the Styles Clash, with AJ getting overlooked in favour of the new toys in town. And by new toys, I mean second-hand WWE action figures that were offered a lot of money just to pop in and do some stuff. Styles was a quandary for the new Impact pencils. It's not enough to be one of the pillars of the company and one of the best in-ring performers on the planet. No. AJ is now paired with Ric Flair as a nature boy prodigy, complete with feathery robes and a Temu 4 horsemen. Styles' frustration with what TNA was becoming was bubbling as he watched Hulk Hogan metaphorically rip out the idiosyncratic six-sided ring in favour of a four-sided one, and then proceeded to invite all his old mates for a paid holiday in it. Styles said he felt Hogan was embarrassed to be part of TNA Wrestling, which is why he never bigged it up in interviews and tried to make it look as much like WWE as possible. And this put the new management on the back foot with the guy who bleeds TNA Wrestling. Styles would eventually break free of the shadow of Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan on screen, away from all the Immortal and Fortune factions. He found the old AJ Styles once more, got back to having banger matches and building momentum. However, TNA Creative had other ideas. A storyline played out in which our Alan was accused of having an illicit affair with TNA president Dixie Carter. Photos of secret liaisons, recordings of hushed phone calls, videos of the two with their arms around each other in hotel lobbies. The only thing missing was two of them being spotted on the big screen at a Coldplay concert. But of course, this was all just a big misunderstanding. Dixie and AJ Styles were spending so much time together because they were helping a young pregnant woman with addiction problems named Claire Lynch, who went on to claim that she was carrying AJ Styles' love child, before it all turned out to be a fabricated blackmail attempt. I've sped through it a little bit. The whole story was dreadful and spoke to how little Messrs Bischoff and Hogan truly knew about AJ Styles, feeling that they could get the best out of him by putting him in this sort of hot mess melodrama. The actress who played Claire Lynch actually left the company before the angle completely finished, which is what led to it ending. She was getting harassed online for her part in it. Now, no matter how rubbish this was, she did not deserve to be hounded by wrestling fans online that didn't enjoy the Styles Carter Lynch love triangle. You gotta reserve that piss and vinegar for the writers, not the actors trying to make a living. I do want to take a second to say Claire Lynch was played by Julia Riley, who passed away in April of this year. She was a presenter, a songwriter, a voice actor for many well-known brands, and she played Olive Oil at Universal Studios. On her memorial website, she's described as a quiet source of strength for so many. Her light touched everyone who knew her. And in case wrestling fans haven't said it lately, thank you, Julia, and sleep well. So when Julia stepped away from the role, the storyline came to a close. However, the damage was done. On Impact, AJ Styles became despondent. He grew out his hair, let his beard start to come through, acting like a grumpy teenager around his family. This begins the lone wolf era of AJ Styles, where he refused to stand alongside the locker room in a war against TNA's Sons of Banality, the Aces and Eights. It leaned into some of AJ's real dissatisfactions with the company direction as well, created a much needed new edge for AJ Styles that didn't involve dressing up as an 80s wrestler or having a one-night stand. Amongst all this, real TNA president Dixie Carter was receiving a lot of flack for the way she was operating the company behind the scenes. Referred to by TNA alumni as incompetent, gullible, doing more damage than good. She wasn't endearing herself, let's put it that way. Handing the keys to the kingdom to the old new world order of Hogan and Bischoff, well, that didn't help things either. One incident springs to mind, actually. Shortly after signing Hulk Hogan, an episode of Impact infamously began with footage of a behind-doors TNA Town Hall all-talent meeting in which Dixie Carter told the assembled roster to either support her creative direction or piss off. This was so tone-deaf that many writers of wrestling websites at the time thought this was the beginning of a Dixie Carter heel authority storyline. Not yet. In fact, Dixie and her team felt this was the kind of peppy, team-rousing TED Talk that wrestlers and wrestling fans alike would really rally behind. It's really not. I stopped watching it several times whilst researching this video. I had to pause it and walk away because it was just making me cringe a bit too much. And you know you've gone wrong when the 41-year-old bloke with a shark puppet thinks that you are cringe. So what do you do when people don't like you as a boss? Well, in a normal job, you'd probably get employee feedback, you look at how to improve morale, maybe do some training courses, but this is wrestling. So let's turn Dixie Carter into a heel authority figure, which is what happened in 2013. It started with AJ Styles going all shooty, revealing that he was working without a contract. And he was calling out Dixie Carter and her awful decisions that drove the company down and the TNA OGs away. Dixie eventually came out to the ring to confront AJ Styles and was initially deeply apologetic, but it was a ruse. She belittled and emasculated AJ Styles, calling him a marketing gimmick that was subpar of his former self. Oh, you nasty lady. With that, evil Dixie Carter was born, for better or for worse. It was this moment from here that gave us weekly Dixie Carter promos that ranged from rotten to fine, and gave us that demoralising scene that was just too close to real life. Mere weeks after telling AJ Styles he was worthless, Dixie Carter is wrapped around Hulk Hogan's leg, begging him not to leave the company. She changed her tune when AJ Styles defeated the leader of the Aces and Eights, Bully Ray, to once more become TNA World Champion, and desperately tried to get AJ back on Team Dixie with a brand new car, private dressing room, a second-hand watch, and a new big fat contract. Styles refused it all and left without signing a new deal, taking the TNA World title with him. That was all storyline. But behind the scenes, things were just as rough. TNA, desperate to stay alive, were cutting costs wherever they could. Hulk Hogan's contract expired in October of that year and it wasn't renewed. They were getting blocks of back-to-back tapings done to save money on running events every week. And around this time, TNA presented company figurehead AJ Styles with a new deal, which, instead of rewarding him for over a decade of good service, would see him take a pay cut of 60%. Styles, who'd been creatively mistreated for a good while now, saw this as a sign from the Lord to seek out new opportunities. The man who had personified total non-stop action was stopping the action totally, and the Impact tapings before Christmas of that year would be his last. On TV, Dixie Carter, bitter that AJ Styles had walked away from her, crowned a new TNA World Champion in her chosen one, Magnus. The heel turn went down during a match to determine the new champ between Jeff Hardy and Magnus. This was an infamous Dixieland match, where the competitors have to fight out of a steel cage and then climb a ladder on the stage. It's the hat on a hat of wrestling matches. I'm surprised Nick Aldis hasn't introduced it on SmackDown yet. Magnus, to even his surprise, got assistance from Dixie Carter and her lackey Spud to win the match and become Dixie's champion of choice. The coronation of Magnus would be interrupted a week later by the returning AJ Styles, back from Japan and Mexico, making his return to the company to challenge Champ Magnus to a winner-take-all match next week on Impact. Why so quickly? TNA were presenting Genesis, a TV special soon after that. This could surely headline that. Well, the Wrestling Observer reports that the match was put together at such breakneck speed because AJ Styles and TNA still hadn't legitimately come to terms on a new deal. And the day they would be taping this match would be the last chance to write off AJ Styles, to either build to a grand comeback should he resign, or explain his permanent absence should he be gone forever. There was another pressing issue that would change how this match would be put together too. The Observer reported that Magnus had been injured during that Dixieland bollocks. TNA were taping a bunch of stuff in a small amount of time. So while several weeks had elapsed between Magnus winning the title and his winner-take-all match with Styles, in reality, it had only been 2 days. So the big British lad was limited to what he could do in the ring. But with AJ Styles, what might be his last ever set of TNA tapings, they needed to have a match that paid everything off. So this is what we got. It brings us to TNA Impact on January the 9th, 2014. The main event of the night is AJ Styles versus Magnus to determine the undisputed TNA World Champion. Dixie Carter opens the show and calls out AJ Styles to the ring to sign a special one-match only contract. She wants the match to be no disqualification because, and I admire the transparency, she wants AJ Styles to be bruised, bloodied, and stretchered out of the ring on his last night in the company. Styles is fine with that. He's got a bunch of mates backstage who detest Dixie Carter and the company that she has built. They're going to come to his aid by the sounds of it. Dixie and Styles get verbal. Magnus rocks up to chants of paper champ, and he gets some verbal licks in on AJ Styles as well, before AJ Styles signs the contract and promises that he will walk out of the Impact Zone tonight with dignity and the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. 11-year journey to get to where he is, and he'll leave tonight with honor. And the title too. So from here, Dixie Carter makes it her mission on this episode of Impact to seek and destroy all of those who stand with AJ Styles. ODB gets beaten up backstage by Lady Tapper and Gail Kim, so Eric Young drives her to the hospital. He's out. Joseph Park ends up getting blue lighted after a beatdown from the Bromans. He's out. Samoa Joe gets his leg knackered by a wrench-wielding EC3. He's done. James Storm and Gunner are found backstage, out cold, surrounded by broken beer bottles that they hadn't been drinking. They're done too. Sting confronts Dixie Carter, who rolls her eyes in a haze of plausible deniability, promising the hurting will stop when AJ Styles is carted out of the Impact Zone. She then proceeds to get Bobby Roode to face Sting in a steel cage match. Roode puts Sting down with a little help from EC3, Spud, and some weaponry, but after the match, Sting goes into Dixie's office and tells her it'll take more than that to keep him down. In a bit of a Hail Mary, Carter seems to threaten to not re-sign Sting during contract season, as well as casting doubt over AJ Styles' integrity. She does so whilst walking around him, sort of whispering and brushing his shirt. It's all very creepy. Kurt Angle's also gone. He had a family emergency by the sounds of it, but that sounds like it's a trick too. It's a wild night. It brings us to our main event, a match to determine the undisputed TNA World Champion between the Chosen One Magnus and the beloved outcast AJ Styles. All of AJ's mates are out of action or stuck in traction. The deck is stacked. Within 60 seconds of the bell, the shenanigans begin. EC3 and Rockstar Spud run down to attack AJ Styles. Sting, the last one standing, charges to the ring, much quicker than he did with Darby Allin, to help out AJ. And for a while, the playing field is somewhat even. That is until the Bromans and DJZ attack Sting and Styles. It's here that we realise that AJ has another ally in Earl Hebner, the referee, who seems very upset with watching a screwjob go down, and slow counts every time Magnus makes a cover. Magnus isn't doing any offense in this match, you will notice. Again, due to the aforementioned injuries, everybody else is doing the beating for him. Sting rallies. He helps AJ clear house, but then Kazarian and Christopher Daniels, a bad influence, they run in, they put the boots to AJ too. Hebner is now flat out refusing to count anything. He shoves Spud down and heads up the ramp. As he does, Dixie Carter appears, dragging Earl's son Brian, also an official, by the scruff of his neck. She sends him into the ring, and Brian plays the game, starting to count match pinfalls once again. Earl storms off, presumably to write Brian out of the will and sell some t-shirts from his car boot. Sting is giving it the old college try. He gives us double Scorpion death drop to the Bromans. He puts EC3 in the Scorpion deathlock, but the good guys are overwhelmed. Anytime Styles gets any kind of momentum, another set of bad guys are there to beat him down. Eventually, Styles, alongside Sting, rally. They clear the goons out. AJ hits Magnus with the calf killer, locking it in nice and tight. Magnus is about to tap, but Brian Hebner gets clattered by Kazarian to stop him calling the submission. One more burst by AJ. He sends Bad Influence packing. He lands a Styles clash on Magnus. Earl Hebner now runs back to make the count, but Bad Influence pull him out of the ring at 2. Styles wipes out Daniels and Kazarian with a dive to the outside. Looks like he's going for the spinal tap, but here's Bobby Roode. He wipes out AJ Styles with 3 Roode bombs. And with that, Dixie Carter brings out referee Brian Stifler to make the decisive 3 count as all the heels hold Sting and make him watch. Magnus Has both world titles aloft, he pops one on Dixie's shoulder, who smiles and punches the air with joy. The crowd rain down in boos and dishappiness. Kaz describes the match as having a lot of moving parts, which is like saying the Atlantic Ocean has a few fish in it. And that was AJ Styles' last TNA match. 15 minutes and 46 seconds, according to cagematch.net. There's something weirdly poetic about how AJ's last contest at a TNA ring went down. Styles became a beloved competitor throughout his TNA tenure, and when he was allowed to flourish as the talented wrestler that he is, there was nobody better. When new management came in, they simply didn't get AJ Styles, so bogged him down in Ric Flair cosplay and trashy soap opera storylines. AJ Styles' final match in TNA sees him desperately trying to flourish in ring, but every time he started to gain momentum, he was bogged down and eventually had the fight beaten out of him. The Observer reports that had Styles signed on the dotted line with TNA, he would have made his grand return at the end of January at the Impact tapings in Glasgow, leading to a steel cage rematch against Magnus at Lockdown in March of 2014. Eventually, contract negotiations hit an impasse, and AJ Styles went on to pastures new, finding his spirit once more in New Japan Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor. It was reported that AJ had given some consideration to returning to TNA in the wake of Hogan and Bischoff's departure, seeing that the company was in a regrowth period. Now the vines that had been choking the plants had been chopped down. However, one phone call from Paul Triple H Levesque sets AJ Styles off in a very different direction, one that gave us a teeth-rattling pop at the 2015 Royal Rumble and a decade of in-ring action that, for the best part, can be described as phenomenal. WWE and TNA's partnership has made for very intriguing viewing over the last year or so, and seeing AJ Styles appear via video at Slammiversary 2022, proving that time really does heal all wounds, has got people talking again. He was offered a spot in the Hall of Fame at Bound for Glory last year, but turned it down, saying he felt it was disrespectful to WWE, and also a Hall of Fame placement wasn't something he wanted just yet. He has, however, said he'd love one more match in a TNA ring, to end on a note appropriate for the career that he had. In a period of forbidden doors becoming revolving doors, you are, and I am not ruling that one out. Stay safe. Love you, bye.